It's been a very long time in between clicks, but Diablo 3 is finally here, and it will change your perspective on video game quality.
I am justice itself.
20 years have passed since the world was saved, but now a new threat befouls the lands. Of the 7 evils that plague Sanctuary, only 2 remain. Diablo is dead, you killed him twice and smashed his soulstone, along with 2 other prime evils, Mephisto and Baal from Diablo 2. Only 2 demons remain, Belial and Azmodan.
One by one, our brethren fell into your trap.
But when a star falls out of the sky, their minions burst free and wreak havoc once more on the world.
If you missed the boat on the previous Diablo games, then you will feel like you're coming into the 3rd act, and it will be hard to figure out what's going on.
Lies until the very end.
But if you did play those games, then this is a real treat. You'll see familiar faces and enemies.
Does any of this jar your memory?
And even hear familiar sounds from a game that you played and loved over a decade ago. In fact, many of the locations echo old areas too, and much like with StarCraft 2, you're going to be meeting 3D versions of those mobs that you knew and loved. Enemies will burst out of the environment, they'll snare and trap you, swarm you and spew out enemies from their mouth. Character design is beautiful, and there's an appropriate level of gore and blood for a game like this.
I was surprised at how well they told the story, Barjo. I mean, you see a lot of the betrayals and twists coming, but you don't mind so much, and the tragedies are really affecting.
I'm not ashamed to admit, Hex, I may have had a tiny tear at one point.
But we played Diablo for the loot and the cooperative chaos, and you won't be let down. The moment you start fighting in this world, you'll be struck by how solid and reactive everything feels. The camera constantly shakes with the action. Enemies will respond perfectly to your attacks. And the abilities you use alongside your companions are exciting and just plain fun.
Yeah, there's so much going on the screen at once. It's just mayhem, and everything reacts well and the physics are all solid. I especially liked how gross all the Witch Doctor abilities are. Snakes and spiders and giant frogs. Lots of demon vomit.
The bargain stands. Quickly, to my sanctum.
With all this chaos, you will need a decent PC to run this on full. What did you think of your class, Hex?
Well, I played a badass demon hunter, and you begin with a crossbow, but you can also wield melee weapons if you like. I chose to stick mainly with bows, though. I found the attacks and abilities generally had much more impact, and I enjoy a heavy-hitting ranged attack. I thought it was cool that the 2 energies I'd draw from were discipline and hatred, and when I ran out of hatred, I could just, leg it and leave a trail of traps.
I love the Barbarian, which I played in the beta, but this time around I went for a monk. Fast attacks, teleports, and a bit of healing. Pulling mobs in and then kicking them away. It just felt awesome. I especially liked my little water friend. It's my best friend, my water friend. Playing with me and killing all the dudes is my best friend. But my favorite ability was this. Eat bell! Eat bell! Eat that bell!
Yeah.
Triple bell! Quadruple bell! Belt them in the face.
I love my giant bell.
I don't. You said eat bell every time you used it. Every time.
Hey Hex, hey Goose. Yeah, it's bell time.
Hey, don't bell me.
You can tell that Blizzard have worked really hard on all of these classes, though, and all the abilities, too, because they all just feel fun and flexible. For example, if you play a wizard, you can just make a glass cannon design and do everything ranged.
If only they could see me now.
But you can switch it up on the fly and get in there and do some melee, too. For the first time in an RPG, I enjoyed every single class, and I also thoroughly enjoyed watching everyone else's class evolve and change as we played side by side.
Along with the constant unlocks and achievements that are flashing their glowy lights at you, there's also gear and active and passive powers that you'll get along the way. There's always something to mix up your attacks, whether it be a new rune to change an ability or an entirely new ability to slot in. A new rune will also change the look of an ability, so combat always feels fresh, and it's just so quick and easy to change them on the fly for a certain situation, but you'll do this anyway just to experiment. They've just built such a clever reward system, which means this is fun to play on your own or with others.
The first thing you should do, though, is turn on enemy health bars, and the second thing you should do is turn on elective mode, and this will let you put your abilities wherever you like on the taskbar. They've gone for a simplified talent tree system here. It seems to be a direction that a lot of modern RPGs are going, and I think some people won't like it, but in this case, I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I mean, at first the idea of no longer putting points into a tree sounds like an abomination, but it can work quite well. We actually spoke with lead designer on the game, Jay Wilson, about this.
Well, what's interesting about our skill system is I think when people look at it, it looks like there's a very small number of choices. We look back at systems that like attribute point spending and skill point spending, and we said these are really math problems. And the people who love math problems love them. But most people just kind of go up to the forums and they find the answer to the math problem and they plug it in. And also, the other problem with the math problem is there's a right answer. And with customization, we wanted there to be not just one right answer. We wanted a lot of diversity, and we wanted it to be something that anyone could feel like they can customize without having to go and look up a forum to know what the perfect combination of where they put their points is and how to work out the math. I think if people look back at the original Diablo 2, they'll remember that while there were 30 some odd abilities and 20 points you could spend on any of them, the number of builds and abilities that were actually really viable were very small. There was a lot of abilities that were redundant with one another. One of the things we've tried to do is have every ability stand on its own and have the combinations of those abilities be highly diverse and really different from one another and very viable. So we think in the long run, the customization options that we've put in the game have a lot more depth.
I don't think the system will work for all RPGs, but it does work here, and I think it's because you just have so much to customize and play around with.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than ruining a build with a wasted point.
Yeah.
It gives you more time to focus on inventory management and gear, and there is a lot of gear.
The gods hate.
Yeah! So much gold. So much gold.
Money is important to buy what you can't make yourself, but the focus here really is on crafting your own and using the auction house too. Everything you craft gets randomly assigned statistics, so it adds this gambling aspect of both frustration and excitement. So you might make a helm that's good for someone else, you might get lucky and make something that you can use yourself, and if you want someone else to have your pants, you can just chuck them on the ground.
We totally should have swapped pants ages ago.
And the best part is, no one can ninja your loot. When something drops, only you can see it, unless you take it out of your inventory and chuck it away. I think this mechanic will be seen in future RPGs too, because it works so well. But the best gear in the game will come from very rare drops indeed, and it's unlikely you'll find something that you can use yourself. And this is where the auction house will come into play, but soon Blizzard will be launching their very own real-world money auction and trade house.
I have to say, it sounds pretty horrible to me. I mean, real-world money and in-game loot just shouldn't be a thing. I feel like we're getting into Farmville territory.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think that it's going to happen anyway, and gold farmers can ruin an economy, so keeping it within the game could be a good thing.
Well, at least you don't actually need it, because there is plenty of gold to be earned by simply just wandering around and finding random events. And there is actually a lot of randomly generated content in this game, so repeat playthroughs should be quite different.
Yeah, I found it a bit disorientating going back and playing other areas to find the major enemy had moved to a different point and I had to go a different way. Oh, keeps it fresh though. Questing hits that perfect balance of self-exploration and knowing where to go. I was a bit worried things might be a bit too linear, but it doesn't feel like that at all. There's also not many places where you and your party all have to meet up just to progress. The quest tracking is very forgiving. And the best part is, if you drop into someone else's game who's a bit ahead of you and play with them, it'll unlock all the quests that you've missed, so you can go back and do them in your own time.
Amazing. I mean, this freedom is so important because sometimes you just can't find 4 people to play through at the same time from start to finish with a game like this.
One of the big things about Diablo 3 is you need to be connected to play it, even if you're going to play single player, and with the launch issues that happened, a lot of people got very frustrated at that.
Chancellor, my grandfather.
It does highlight the pains and frustrations associated with that connect-only play, but I do understand why they do it for a handful of reasons. And for example, in Diablo 2, there was all that duping where people would go offline and copy their gear and then come online and sell it all.
Yeah, I understand people were upset, but honestly, I think the launch issues have been blown way out of proportion. I mean, it's completely normal for a game like this to have some launch issues in the first week.
Yeah, I actually think they did a really good job at sorting it out.
Absolutely.
If you look at something like any of the Call of Duty games online or Battlefield 3, or even Battlefield Bad Company 2, they took a month to sort that one out. Try getting into a DayZ server, and these problems with Diablo 3 will feel like a walk in the park. If a walk in the park was a problem, small problem, like a niggle. It's not that bad, is what we're saying.
One might think you a sensible person if you keep talking like that.
Once you are connected and ready to go, the drop-in, drop-out system is so smooth. Connecting to a friend's game is done with 1-2 clicks and you're in. And there's a teleportation system as well. It speeds everything up in-game.
It's seamless, isn't it? And the way that the menus are designed here and that teleport system just speak to the mantra of this game. You know, it just keeps you moving forward and doesn't waste your time. And the loading is about 3 seconds.
It's such a different vibe playing in single player though, isn't it, Barjo?
Andariel was the only female evil. She aided the lesser evils for many years.
It's a good way to get to grips with your abilities, and some of them are better for soloing too. On your own, atmosphere and lore take over as you and your hired NPC companion chat about the issues at hand.
Belial has been watching you since you arrived. There are traces of his magic everywhere.
You start to notice more of the world and its high level of detail in all areas. Enemy animations are fluid and exciting and just gory. Every now and again, an enemy's head might fly off or they'll get de-skinned.
Or just explode in a bloody mess.
Yeah, and it's such a wonderfully fleshed out world too, isn't it? Little bugs and creatures are everywhere, and along with the simple effects and painted backgrounds, you feel like you're truly in another world, which is quite an achievement for a game with this kind of fixed view. It's consistently beautiful, and you pretty much play a game like this with your mouth open in awe.
I love squishing the bugs.
Yeah, me
Squish,
too.
squish, squish.
Squish.
It's just a shame that your first playthrough is so easy. There's barely any strategy to it, and I must have died maybe twice in my first 15 or 20 hours.
Yeah, I found it pretty forgiving as well, and mainly because my main memory of Diablo 2 was that if you died, you had to run all the way back to your corpse if you wanted to get your gear, but here you just res at the last checkpoint with all your gear, just a bit of a hit to your durability, but you can teleport back home and repair that in a heartbeat anyway.
I didn't mind that too much. After a while, I never want to walk back to a corpse again. But there were instances where, for example, I was fighting this big enemy and I got him down to one tiny little bit, so it would have been just 1 or 2 hits and he would have been gone, but he got me. So when I went back to take him out, I thought, okay, I'll mix up my abilities, I'll try a different strategy, maybe I can take him down. He didn't even regen health, so I just went up and went,
It was getting a little boring in there.
Once you get into Act 3, things do get a bit more challenging with positional AoEs, but it's still pretty easy.
Yeah, but you know, I guess it's just what you do with Diablo 2. You clock it in the first playthrough to learn it, and then you play it again on Nightmare and Hardcore, and that's where the strategy really counts.
You're lucky you weren't eaten alive.
Oh, nonsense. I'm tough and bony. Demons have better taste than that.
I know, I just think a lot of people are going to miss out on that beautiful strategy because they'll play it through once and then stop. It's sad. I am impressed with the difficulty, manipulation and scaling in multiplayer though. When other people join your game, you don't feel overpowered, the enemies scale up accordingly.
Oh, so bloody.
Yeah, there is also PvP coming in the form of multiplayer arenas, but Blizzard are holding back on that for now because it's not quite ready yet. But we should wrap this up, Barjo.
Yes, well, there are a few games released each year with this level of polish and craftsmanship. It's a mighty fine click 'em up with plenty of fan service, and it is a more accessible game, but not at the cost of gameplay and depth. So I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
You know, there's replay value in this even before you get to the end of your first playthrough, because you'll go back and replay sections just to help your friends level up, and I think there's something really great about that. But this is a joyous time destroyer with some beautiful visuals and great voice acting, and I think that even if you don't like this genre, you'll like this game. It's 9.5 out of 10 from me as well.
And just a reminder, if you want to see that full interview with Jay Wilson, it'll be on our website.
Where in Bullcather's name did I go wrong in my life?